The first handful of dirt hit her mother's coffin. That's when her husband leaned close and whispered 5 words that
I'm the
destroyed her
one who
entire
killed
world.
him.
I want a divorce, now. Charlotte was 7 months pregnant, standing at her mother's grave, surrounded by mourners. And the man she had loved for 8 years was handing her divorce papers. He thought she was worthless now. Thought her mother's death meant she had nothing left. He had no idea.
Your uncle
because in
changed his
48
will
hours,
right before
Charlotte
he
would
died.
discover a secret so shocking,
Everything now
so
belongs to
impossible,
you.
that it would change everything.
It's over,
Her
Derek.
mother wasn't a retired school teacher
The
living on a
evidence
pension.
doesn't lie,
She was
and
a hidden
neither
billionaire,
does she.
worth $900 million.
You've lost
And she had
everything.
left every single penny to Charlotte. What happens when a man throws away a fortune he never knew existed? What happens when a broken woman rises from the ashes of betrayal? Stay with me until the end, because this story will leave you breathless. The first handful of dirt hit her mother's coffin. That's when Derek leaned close and whispered, "I want a divorce. My lawyer's waiting in the parking lot." Charlotte Weston felt the words enter her ear, but they didn't make sense. Not here, not now. Not standing at the edge of her mother's grave with 30 mourners watching and a minister reciting the 23rd Psalm. She turned her head slowly, looked at her husband of 8 years. His face was blank, impatient, like he was waiting for a bus that was running late. "What did you say?" she whispered back. Derek pressed something into her hand. Paper, thick and official. She looked down and saw her name typed in coal black letters. Charlotte Marie Weston, respondent. Divorce papers. At her mother's funeral. The baby kicked hard against her ribs. 7 months pregnant, and her unborn child was protesting what her brain couldn't yet process. The minister's voice droned on. "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil." Evil, yes, that's what this was. Pure evil dressed in a $3,000 suit and Italian leather shoes. Charlotte's fingers closed around the papers, crumpling them slightly. She couldn't drop them, couldn't throw them, couldn't move at all. The September wind carried the scent of fresh-turned earth and dying flowers. Gray clouds threatened rain from above. Everything was ending. Her mother's life, her marriage, the future she had imagined. All of it ending. Eleanor Weston was being lowered into the ground. 67 years old, retired school teacher who had taught chemistry to 3 generations of students at Jefferson High School. Beloved mother, the only parent Charlotte had left since her father died in a car accident when she was 3 years old. Charlotte had spent the last 6 months watching cancer eat her mother alive, had held Eleanor's hand through chemotherapy, had learned to change IV bags and administer pain medication, had slept on a cot beside her mother's hospital bed for the final 2 weeks. And through it all, Derek had been distant, distracted, always somewhere else. Now she knew why. The minister said amen. People began to move, a line formed to offer condolences. Charlotte stood frozen, paralyzed by shock. Her best friend Maggie appeared at her elbow. Margaret Collins. They had been friends since freshman year of college. Through failed relationships and career changes and the 1,000 small disasters that made up a life. "Charlie," Maggie's voice was sharp with concern. "Charlie, what's wrong? You're white as a sheet." Charlotte thrust the papers toward her friend, couldn't speak, could barely breathe. Maggie's eyes scanned the document, her expression transformed from concern to confusion to rage in the span of 3 seconds. "That son of a bitch," she hissed. Charlotte looked for Derek. He was already walking away. Moving through the headstones toward the parking lot, his phone pressed to his ear. She could see his shoulders shaking. He was laughing at his mother-in-law's funeral while his pregnant wife held divorce papers. He was laughing at something someone said on the phone. Charlotte's sweetheart, an elderly woman appeared before her, Mrs. Patterson from the church, white hair and kind eyes in a hand that trembled as it reached for Charlotte's arm. "Your mother was such a wonderful woman. She talked about you constantly. So proud of you and that grandbaby on the way." Charlotte heard herself respond, "Thank you for coming." The words came from somewhere outside herself. Some autopilot function that knew how to behave at funerals even when your world was collapsing. More mourners approached, more hands to shake, more condolences to accept. Charlotte moved through the motions like a sleepwalker, nodding, thanking, pretending to be present, all while clutching divorce papers against her pregnant belly. Maggie stood guard beside her, intercepting the more persistent well-wishers, making excuses. She's exhausted. The pregnancy, the loss, you understand. Everyone understood. Everyone nodded sympathetically. No one knew the real reason Charlotte couldn't speak. The cemetery workers waited at a respectful distance, three men in work clothes leaning on shovels. They had a job to finish, more graves to dig. The business of death didn't pause for personal tragedy. Charlotte watched them begin to fill her mother's grave. Each shovelful of dirt was another goodbye, another piece of Eleanor disappearing forever. She should be crying, she knew that. The tears had flowed freely for months. During the diagnosis, through the treatments, in the final days when Eleanor drifted in and out of consciousness. But now, standing at the grave, Charlotte felt nothing but a vast and terrifying emptiness. The shock had frozen everything. Grief, fear, anger, all of it locked away behind walls of ice. "We need to go," Maggie said finally. "You need to sit down, eat something. You're carrying a baby, Charlie." Charlotte let herself be led away, one foot in front of the other, past rows of headstones marking other people's losses, past elaborate monuments and simple markers, past the section reserved for veterans where American flags fluttered in the wind. The parking lot was nearly empty now. Most of the mourners had already left for the reception at the church, the reception Charlotte was supposed to attend, where she was supposed to accept more condolences and eat finger sandwiches and pretend her life wasn't in ruins. Derek's silver BMW was gone. Of course it was. Maggie's sedan waited near the entrance. She helped Charlotte into the passenger seat, buckled her seatbelt like she was a child who couldn't be trusted to do it herself. Maybe she couldn't. Maybe Charlotte would never trust herself again. She had trusted Derek, had believed in their marriage, had planned a future that included him. What did she know about anything? "I'm calling my lawyer," Maggie said as she started the engine. "First thing tomorrow. That bastard isn't going to get away with this." Charlotte stared out the window. The cemetery gates passed. Then tree-lined streets with houses that looked like her own. Then the turn onto Maple Avenue. Their street, hers and Derek's. The house came into view. White colonial with black shutters that Derek had insisted on because they looked classic. Red front door that Charlotte had painted herself 3 summers ago while Derek complained about the mess. Hydrangeas along the walkway that Eleanor had helped her plant the spring after the wedding. Everything about this house held memories, and now all of them were tainted. Maggie parked in the driveway. The space where Derek's BMW usually sat was empty. Had been empty for how long? Charlotte tried to remember the last time she'd seen his car here and couldn't. "Do you want me to come in with you, dear?" Maggie asked. "Please, Vaya." They walked up the front steps together. Charlotte's key turned in the lock. The door swung open onto darkness. The house was silent. No hum of the refrigerator, no tick of the grandfather clock in the hallway. No sound at all except Charlotte's own breathing. She flipped the light switch. Nothing happened. "Power's out," Maggie said. She pulled out her phone, used the flashlight to navigate. But it wasn't the power. Charlotte could see the green glow of the microwave clock in the kitchen. The lights worked. Someone had just turned them all off. They moved through the house like explorers in an unfamiliar land. Living room. Derek's leather recliner was gone. The 70-inch television he had insisted they needed. The expensive sound system that had taken 3 technicians to install. All gone. Kitchen. The refrigerator hummed normally. Charlotte opened it, empty except for her prenatal vitamins and a bottle of wine Derek had never liked. He had cleaned her out, taken everything of value, left her with vitamins and wine she couldn't drink. The stairs seemed steeper than usual. Charlotte's pregnant body protested each step. Her back ached. Her feet throbbed. But she had to see, had to know the full extent of what he had done. The master bedroom door stood open. She stepped inside and stopped. Derek's closet was empty. Wire hangers dangled where his suits used to hang. Expensive Italian suits he claimed were necessary for impressing clients. Shirts organized by color. Ties arranged by pattern. All of it gone. His dresser drawers hung open. Nothing inside. His nightstand cleared except for a single piece of paper. Charlotte picked it up. Derek's handwriting. Sharp angles and impatient strokes. "Took what I needed. Lawyer will handle the rest. Don't make this difficult." Don't make this difficult. He had served her divorce papers at her mother's grave, had moved out without warning, had stripped the house of everything valuable, and he was telling her not to make it difficult. Charlotte sat on the edge of the bed, her bed now, just hers. The mattress creaked under her weight. She stared at the empty closet, at the ghost of the life she thought she had, at the void where her husband used to exist. Maggie appeared in the doorway. "Oh, Charlie, oh, honey." Charlotte couldn't respond. The ice was still there, protecting her, keeping her from feeling what would destroy her if she let it in. She needed the ice, needed to stay frozen a little longer, until she could figure out what came next. "I should have seen it," Charlotte said finally. Her voice sounded strange, hollow. The signs were all there. He was never home, never interested in the baby, never really present even when he was here. "This isn't your fault," Maggie said firmly. "Don't you dare blame yourself for his cruelty." But Charlotte did blame herself for being naive, for trusting too easily, for believing that love meant something when clearly it didn't. 23 days. That's how long till her due date. Derek couldn't wait 23 days. He couldn't even wait until they left the cemetery. Charlotte looked down at her pregnant belly, her daughter or son. She hadn't wanted to know the sex, had wanted it to be a surprise, something joyful to anticipate. Now the surprise felt cruel, just another unknown in a future full of uncertainty. The baby kicked, strong and insistent, as if demanding attention. "I know," Charlotte whispered to her belly. "I know, I'm here. I'm still here." Maggie crouched beside her. "What do you need? Tell me what you need and I'll make it happen." Charlotte tried to think, failed. Her brain felt like it was wrapped in cotton. "Water," she said finally. "I need water." Such a simple request, such a small thing. But it was something, a place to start. Maggie hurried downstairs. Charlotte could hear her moving through the kitchen, running the tap. Alone for a moment, Charlotte finally let herself look at the divorce papers still clutched in her hand. Wrinkled now, damp from her sweating palm, she smoothed them out, read the words. Petitioner requests dissolution of marriage. Irreconcilable differences. No contest requested. No contest. He wanted her to just accept it. Sign on the dotted line. Go away quietly. And yesterday she might have. The old Charlotte, the one who avoided conflict, who smoothed things over, who apologized even when she'd done nothing wrong. That Charlotte would have signed, would have let him have whatever he wanted just to end the pain. But something had shifted in the hour since those words entered her ear at her mother's grave. Something small but significant. A seed of something harder than grief. Anger. Just the beginning of it. Just a spark. But enough to keep her from signing. Enough to make her want to fight. Maggie returned with water. Charlotte drank deeply. Let the cool liquid ground her in her body. "We should look for evidence," Maggie said. "Phone records, credit card statements, bank accounts. If he's been planning this, there'll be a trail." Charlotte nodded slowly. Yes, a trail. Derek was meticulous about documentation. Years of working in finance had made him obsessive about records. But where would he keep things he wanted to hide? "His home office," Charlotte said. "He always locked it when I was home. Said he needed to concentrate, needed privacy for work calls." They went down the hall. The office door was closed but not locked. Derek hadn't bothered. Why would he? He was already gone. The room was stripped like everywhere else. Computer gone, files gone. The expensive ergonomic chair he claimed was necessary for his back. Gone. But there was one place Derek might have overlooked. Charlotte knelt awkwardly, her pregnant belly making the movement difficult. She felt along the bottom of the desk. Her fingers found what she was looking for. A hidden compartment. She had discovered it years ago while cleaning. Had mentioned it to Derek once and seen something flicker in his eyes. Fear maybe, or calculation. She had never mentioned it again, and clearly he had forgotten. The compartment opened with a click. Inside, a single folder. Charlotte pulled it out. Opened it with trembling hands. Credit card statements for an account she had never seen. Billed to an address she didn't recognize. Charges going back years. Restaurants she'd never been to. Hotels in cities Derek claimed to visit for work. A jewelry store, a lingerie shop. An apartment rental in downtown. An apartment. Derek had been paying rent on an apartment she knew nothing about. Charlotte flipped through the pages. The charges told a story of lies and betrayal, and a double life carefully hidden from his trusting wife. She wasn't looking for this. Not consciously, but she had found it anyway, and now she couldn't unfind it. Maggie peered over her shoulder. What is that? Proof, Charlotte said. Her voice was steadier now, colder. Proof that this didn't just start. Proof that he's been lying for years. She kept flipping. Found another document. A lease agreement for an apartment downtown. 2 bedrooms, in-unit laundry, parking included. The tenant was listed as Derek Weston. The co-tenant was listed as Vanessa Clark. Charlotte didn't recognize the name, but she knew what it meant, what it had to mean. There was someone else. Had been someone else. Maybe for years. At the bottom of the folder, one final item. A small velvet box. Charlotte opened it. Inside, a ring. Diamond solitaire. At least 2 carats. Much bigger than the ring Derek had given her 8 years ago. An engagement ring. For the other woman. Charlotte stared at the diamond. Let it catch the fading afternoon light. Wondered how much of her money had paid for it. Because it was her money. Had always been her money. Derek had never made much despite his expensive tastes. Charlotte's salary as a graphic designer had paid most of their bills. Her inheritance from her grandmother had bought this house. And now Derek was using her resources to buy jewelry for his mistress. The anger grew. No longer a spark. A flame now, small but building. Charlotte had closed the box, put it back in the folder, stood up slowly, carefully, one hand on her belly. I want all of this copied, she said, before he realizes he left it behind. Maggie nodded. I'll handle it. You should rest. You've been through too much today. Charlotte didn't argue. She was exhausted, bone-deep tired in a way sleep couldn't fix. She returned to the master bedroom, lay down on top of the covers, stared at the ceiling. The shock was fading. The ice was melting. And underneath, the pain was waiting. Her mother was dead. Her husband was gone. Her marriage had been a lie from the beginning. And in 23 days, she was going to have a baby, alone. Charlotte pressed her hand against her belly, felt her child move inside her, a flutter of life in the midst of so much death. It's going to be okay, she whispered, not sure if she was talking to the baby or to herself. Somehow, some way, it's going to be okay. She didn't believe it, not yet, but saying the words felt important, felt like planting a flag in hostile territory. This was her life now. Whatever came next, she would face it. She had no other choice. The phone rang at 7:43 the next morning. Charlotte hadn't slept, not really. She had drifted in and out of consciousness, haunted by dreams that mixed her mother's funeral with Derek's departure into one long nightmare of loss. Maggie had stayed in the guest room, refusing to leave, refusing to let Charlotte face this first morning alone. The sunlight streaming through the windows felt wrong, too bright, too cheerful for a world that had ended. Charlotte reached for her phone. Unknown number. Normally she would let it go to voicemail, but normal had ceased to exist. Hello? Her voice was rough from crying she didn't remember doing. Mrs. Weston. A man's voice, deep, professional. This is Theodore Blackwell. I was your mother's attorney. Charlotte sat up slowly. Her pregnant belly made every movement awkward these days. My mother's attorney? Yes. We met briefly at the hospital last month. You were in the hallway when I came to update her paperwork. I don't expect you to remember. It was a difficult time. Charlotte searched her memory, found a vague image of a tall man with silver hair, distinguished, carrying a leather briefcase. I remember, sort of. I'm calling because there are urgent matters regarding your mother's estate, matters that require immediate attention. He paused. The silence felt weighted. I need to see you today if possible. In my office. And Mrs. Weston, this is quite important. You should come alone. The request struck Charlotte as strange. Estates were usually straightforward affairs, especially for someone like Eleanor, who had lived modestly on a teacher's pension. What kind of matters? Charlotte asked. Another pause. Longer this time. The kind I can't discuss over the phone. Please trust me when I say this meeting will answer questions you don't even know you have yet. Can you be here at 11? Charlotte looked at the clock. 3 hours. Enough time to shower and dress and pretend to be functional. All right, what's the address? Theodore gave her the information. Downtown, the financial district, an address Charlotte recognized as one of the more prestigious office buildings in the city. And Mrs. Weston, his voice softened slightly. I want you to know that your mother was one of the finest people I've ever known. What I have to tell you today will be difficult, but I believe it will also be a gift, her final gift to you. The line went dead before Charlotte could respond. She stared at her phone. Her final gift. What could that possibly mean? Maggie appeared in the doorway, still in yesterday's clothes. Who was that? My mother's lawyer. He wants to see me today. Want me to come? Charlotte shook her head. He specifically said to come alone. I don't understand why, but he seems serious about it. Maggie frowned. That's strange. Everything is strange right now. Charlotte pushed herself out of bed. I need to shower. I smell like cemetery dirt and grief. I'll make breakfast. You're eating for two, remember? Charlotte didn't feel hungry, hadn't felt hungry since Derek's whisper at the graveside. But Maggie was right. The baby needed nutrients, even if Charlotte couldn't taste them. The shower helped, hot water washing away the physical residue of yesterday, even if it couldn't touch the emotional wreckage. Charlotte stood under the spray for a long time. Let the steam fill her lungs. Let the heat loosen the tension in her shoulders. When she finally emerged, she felt almost human, almost functional. She dressed carefully. Black dress she'd worn to the funeral. It still fit despite her pregnancy. Flat shoes because her back couldn't handle heels anymore. Minimal makeup to hide the evidence of sleepless crying. Breakfast was eggs and toast that tasted like cardboard. Charlotte forced herself to eat while Maggie watched with worried eyes. You'll call me after, Maggie said. Tell me what's going on. Of course, and if you need anything at all. I know. Charlotte reached across the table, squeezed her friend's hand. Thank you for staying, for being here. I don't know what I would do without you. You'd survive, Maggie said firmly. You're stronger than you know, Charlie. You've always been stronger than you know. The words echoed something her mother used to say. Charlotte felt tears prick her eyes and blinked them away. No more crying, at least not until after this meeting. The drive downtown took 30 minutes. Charlotte parked in a structure across from the office building. Sat in Murphy for 5 minutes, gathering her courage. Whatever Theodore Blackwell had to tell her, it would change something. She could feel it in her bones. Some shift coming that would alter the landscape of her life yet again. She was so tired of change, of loss, of the ground shifting beneath her feet, but there was nothing to do except go forward. The building was all glass and steel and money. The lobby featured a marble fountain and original artwork, security guards in blazers instead of uniforms. Charlotte gave her name to the receptionist, was directed to the 10th floor. Private elevator, no less. Theodore Blackwell's office occupied the entire southeast corner of the building. Views of the city skyline stretched to the horizon. The furniture was antique, the carpet plush enough to sink into. This was not the office of a small-time attorney who handled teacher estates. Theodore rose from behind his desk when she entered, tall and silver-haired, just as she vaguely remembered. But his eyes were the surprise, warm and kind and full of something that looked almost like excitement. Mrs. Weston, thank you for coming on such short notice. He gestured to a leather chair. Please sit. Can I get you anything? Tea, water, coffee? Just water, please. He poured from a crystal pitcher, handed her the glass. His hands trembled slightly, she noticed. Whether from age or emotion, she couldn't tell. Before we begin, Theodore said, settling into his own chair, I want you to know that everything I'm about to tell you was done out of love. Your mother loved you more than anything in this world. Every decision she made, every secret she kept, was to protect you. Charlotte felt her pulse quicken. You're scaring me. I know, and I'm sorry, but there's no gentle way to say this. He opened a thick folder on his desk. Charlotte, your mother was not who you thought she was. The words hung in the air. Charlotte waited for them to make sense. They didn't. I don't understand. My mother was a chemistry teacher. She taught at Jefferson High for 40 years. Yes, she did, and she loved every minute of it. Teaching was her passion, her calling. Theodore paused, but teaching wasn't her only profession. He slid a document across the desk, legal papers covered in corporate seals and tiny print. Your mother was also the founder, sole owner, and chief executive officer of Meridian Pharmaceuticals. Charlotte heard the words, registered them as English, but they didn't compute. That's impossible. Meridian is one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the country. I've seen their commercials. Their drugs are in every hospital in America. Yes, they are, because your mother built an empire. Theodore's voice was gentle but firm. She started in her garage in 1983. Just her and a notebook full of chemical formulas. By 1990, she had 50 employees. By 2000, she had 500. Today, Meridian employs over 3,000 people worldwide. Charlotte's hands were shaking. Water sloshed in her glass. How is this possible? She lived in a 3-bedroom house. She drove a 10-year-old Honda. She clipped coupons from the Sunday paper. All by choice, all to protect you. Theodore leaned forward. Your mother watched too many wealthy families destroyed by money. Children who grew up entitled, who never learned the value of work, who became targets for fortune hunters and con artists. The phrase hit Charlotte like a physical blow. Fortune hunters, con artists, Derek. She knew, Charlotte whispered, about Derek. She suspected from the very beginning. Theodore pulled another document from the folder. When you announced your engagement, she hired a private investigator. She wanted to know exactly who she was welcoming into the family. He handed her the document, a report, dozens of pages thick. Charlotte flipped through with numb fingers. Derek's face stared out from photographs. His credit history, his gambling debts, his prior relationships, his financial problems stretching back years before they met. He was drowning when he met you, Theodore said. Nearly $500,000 in debt, gambling losses, bad investments, loans from people who don't accept late payments gracefully. Charlotte kept flipping, found photographs, Derek at restaurants with women she didn't recognize, hotel parking lots, coffee shops. These are dated during our marriage, she said. Her voice sounded far away. Yes, the affairs weren't recent, Charlotte. There have been multiple women over the years. Vanessa Clark is simply the current one, the one he planned to leave you for. Vanessa Clark, the name from the lease agreement, the co-tenant on an apartment paid for with money Derek didn't have. Why didn't she tell me? Charlotte asked. The question she kept asking, the one that hurt most. All this time, why didn't she say something? Because she knew you loved him. Because she hoped she was wrong. Because she wanted you to see the truth yourself rather than having it thrust upon you. Theodore's voice was heavy with old sorrow. She wrote about it in her journal. She agonized over that decision every day. He pulled out another document, a photocopy of a handwritten page. This is from 3 years ago, after Derek convinced you to take out a home equity loan for his investment opportunity. Your mother was frantic. Charlotte read her mother's words. I wanted to tell her today. About Derek, about the money, about everything. But I stopped myself. Some truths can only be discovered, not taught. If I tell her, she will defend him. She'll think I'm interfering. She has to see it herself. I just pray she sees it before it's too late. The journal entry blurred through Charlotte's tears. Her mother had seen everything, had known everything, had watched from the sidelines, unable to help, unwilling to interfere. And now she was gone. And Charlotte was alone with the truth. How much? Charlotte asked. Her voice was barely audible. How much is the company worth? Theodore took a deep breath. At the time of your mother's death, Meridian Pharmaceuticals was valued at $912 million, all of which now belongs to you. The number didn't register, couldn't register. It was too large, too impossible. $912 million. Charlotte's mother, who argued with the cable company over $3, who saved rubber bands and twist ties, who refused to buy name brand cereal because the store brand was 20 cents cheaper. That woman had been worth nearly $1 billion. There's more, Theodore said gently. Real estate holdings across 12 states. A brownstone in Manhattan that's been vacant for 15 years. Ranch land in Montana. A beachfront villa in Malibu. A private island in the Caribbean. Stop. Charlotte held up her hand. Please, I can't. This is too much. Theodore nodded, sat back, let her breathe. Charlotte stared at the documents spread across his desk. The evidence of a double life so complete, so thorough, that even her own daughter had never suspected. How? How had Eleanor done it? How had she built an empire while grading chemistry papers? How had she hidden billions while living on a teacher's salary? How did no one know, Charlotte asked finally. This company is publicly visible. People must have known who owned it. 17 holding companies, Theodore explained. 17 layers of corporate protection. Your mother structured everything through a web of legal entities so complex that even I don't fully understand it. The only name that appears anywhere is mine, as her registered agent. Charlotte looked at him, really looked, saw the grief in his eyes, the loss. You loved her, she said, not a question. Theodore smiled sadly. For over 30 years. She was my closest friend, my confidant. The finest mind I've ever encountered. He paused. And the most stubborn woman in existence. Charlotte almost laughed. Stubbornness was definitely hereditary. There's one more thing, Theodore said. He pulled an envelope from the folder. Charlotte recognized her mother's handwriting on the front. Her name, in Eleanor's elegant script. She left you a letter. She wrote it 3 years ago around the time of that journal entry. She asked me to give it to you after she was gone. Charlotte took the envelope with trembling hands, held it for a moment. Her mother's final words, her last communication. She wasn't ready, might never be ready, but she opened it anyway. My darling girl, if you're reading this, I'm gone and you've learned my secret. I know you must be confused, angry maybe, hurt that I kept this from you. Please try to understand. I hid my fortune because I wanted you to be loved for yourself, not your money. I've seen too many families destroyed by wealth, too many children who grew up not knowing who their real friends were, who married people who only wanted their bank accounts. I feared I failed with Derek. From the beginning, something about him troubled me. He never looked at you the way a man should look at his wife, never seemed interested in your dreams, only his own. But I couldn't tell you. You loved him, you believed in him, and I hoped, desperately hoped, that I was wrong. If you're reading this, I probably wasn't wrong. And I'm sorry. Sorry I couldn't protect you from that pain. Sorry I couldn't be there to help you through it. But Charlotte, you have strength you don't know yet. I've seen it. In the way you care for others. In the way you face challenges. In the core of who you are. The company is yours now. Not just the money, but the responsibility. 3,000 employees depend on Meridian. Millions of patients depend on our medications. I'm trusting you with all of it. Make it mean something. Make me proud. And know that wherever I am, whatever comes next, I love you. I have always loved you. I will always love you. Mom. Charlotte read the letter 3 times. Let the words sink into her bones. Her mother had known, had worried, had prepared for this moment while hoping it would never come. And now Charlotte was alone with an empire and a broken heart. What happens now? She asked Theodore. That's up to you. The transfer of assets will take several weeks to complete. In the meantime, I suggest we keep this information private. The press will find out eventually. When Meridian files the ownership change paperwork, it will become public record. Charlotte thought about Derek, about the divorce papers still sitting on her nightstand, about the man who had calculated his exit so carefully. He had no idea what she had inherited, no idea what he had thrown away. How long can we keep it quiet, she asked. A few weeks, maybe a month if we're careful. A month, 4 weeks, time to prepare, time to plan, time to become someone who could handle what was coming. Do it, Charlotte said. Keep it quiet as long as you can. Theodore nodded. And Derek, do you want me to handle the divorce proceedings? Charlotte thought about the folder of evidence, the credit card statements, the apartment lease, the engagement ring meant for another woman. I want everything documented, she said. Her voice was stronger now, harder. Every affair, every lie, every dollar he spent on women who weren't his wife. When this goes to court, I want the judge to see exactly who Derek Weston really is. Theodore smiled. For the first time, There was something fierce in his expression. Your mother would be proud. Charlotte gathered the documents, placed them carefully in her purse, stood to leave. At the door, she turned back. Thank you for everything you did for her, for being her friend. Theodore's eyes glistened. It was an honor. And Charlotte, if you need anything, anything at all, I'm here, day or night. Charlotte nodded, then walked out into a world that had changed completely in the span of 1 hour. She sat in her car for 45 minutes, not crying, not planning, just breathing. Her mother was a billionaire, her husband was a liar. She was 7 months pregnant, and nothing would ever be the same again. The following weeks moved in a blur of documents and revelations. Charlotte spent hours each day in conference rooms that smelled of money and power. Lawyers explained things she barely understood. Accountants presented numbers that looked like typos. The scope of Eleanor's empire revealed itself piece by piece, like a curtain slowly rising on a stage set that kept getting bigger. Properties first. Theodore spread maps across the conference table, pointing out real estate holdings. The brownstone in Manhattan, 4 stories in one of the most expensive neighborhoods in the world, empty for 15 years but perfectly maintained, worth approximately $47 million. Ranch land in Montana, 8,000 acres of pristine wilderness. A private retreat Eleanor had visited twice a year, telling Charlotte she was attending educational conferences. The beachfront villa in Malibu, 3 bedrooms with floor-to-ceiling windows facing the Pacific, a small private beach, security systems that would satisfy a head of state. The private island in the Caribbean, purchased in 1992 on what Eleanor had described as a whim. 75 acres of tropical paradise with a main house, 3 guest cottages, and a helicopter pad. Charlotte's mother, who complained about the price of gas, who used grocery store coupons religiously, who wore the same winter coat for 11 years because it still works fine. That woman had owned a private island. Then came the financial assets, stocks, bonds, and investment portfolios so diversified they required 3 separate accounting firms to manage. And the patents, dozens of pharmaceutical patents worth hundreds of millions in ongoing royalties, drugs that treated cancer, medications that managed chronic diseases, life-saving treatments that Eleanor had developed in her spare time while grading chemistry homework. Charlotte began to understand her mother in a new way, not just as a parent who loved her, but as a genius who had built something extraordinary while maintaining an ordinary life. How? That was the question that haunted her. How had Eleanor managed it? Theodore tried to explain. She compartmentalized. At home, she was mom. At Meridian, she was Dr. Weston. 2 completely separate identities. 2 completely separate lives. But the time, Charlotte said. Where did she find the time? She didn't sleep much, never had. 4 hours a night, maybe 5. The rest she poured into work. Building, creating, improving. Charlotte thought about her childhood, her mother grading papers late into the night, her mother up before dawn preparing for school, her mother always busy, always working, not on lesson plans, on an empire. She loved every minute of it, Theodore added gently. The challenge, the problem solving, the knowledge that her work was helping people. Teaching gave her joy, but Meridian gave her purpose. Purpose. Charlotte wondered if she would ever find her own. The business meetings continued. Board members flew in from across the country to meet the new owner. They were wary at first, skeptical of this pregnant young woman who had inherited what they'd spent decades building. Charlotte couldn't blame them. She was skeptical of herself. But she listened, learned, asked questions that revealed she was smarter than she looked. Slowly, the skepticism transformed into cautious respect. Your mother was right about you, the CFO admitted after a particularly productive meeting. She said you had her brain, just needed the chance to use it. Her mother had talked about her to these strangers, to the people who ran the company Charlotte hadn't known existed. The revelation warmed something cold in Charlotte's chest. Even in her secret life, Eleanor had been proud of her daughter. Through it all, Derek remained blissfully ignorant. His calls had stopped after Charlotte blocked his number. His lawyer's letters kept coming, demanding signatures, threatening consequences. Charlotte forwarded everything to Theodore and tried not to think about it. The news would break soon. The ownership transfer couldn't be hidden forever. But for now, in this brief window of peace, Charlotte could prepare. She read her mother's journal, pages and pages of Eleanor's handwriting, documenting 30 years of building an empire while hiding it from the world. Some entries were about business, chemical formulas and patent strategies and negotiations with foreign companies. Charlotte didn't understand most of it, but other entries were about her, about Charlotte, her mother's observations and hopes and fears. From 15 years ago, Charlotte started high school today. She's nervous about fitting in, about making friends. She doesn't know how remarkable she is, how kind and smart and capable. I hope she learns to see herself the way I see her. From 10 years ago, Charlotte brought Derek home for Thanksgiving. He's charming, too charming, the kind of charming that feels practiced. I don't trust him, but she looks at him with such love. I hope I'm wrong. From 5 years ago, Charlotte lost the baby, a miscarriage at 8 weeks. Derek seemed almost relieved. He doesn't want children, I think. He wants Charlotte, or rather, he wants what he thinks Charlotte can give him. But children aren't part of his plan. My poor girl. She's grieving alone, even with him beside her. Charlotte had to stop reading after that entry. The memory of that miscarriage was still raw. The emptiness afterward. The way Derek had suggested they try again later, as if losing a pregnancy was like missing a bus. He hadn't comforted her, hadn't grieved with her, had barely seemed to notice her pain. She should have seen it then, should have recognized the warning signs. But love makes you blind, makes you excuse the inexcusable, makes you believe in people who don't deserve belief. Never again. Charlotte promised herself that. Never again would she let someone treat her pain as an inconvenience. 2 weeks after the funeral, Charlotte felt strong enough to face the apartment. Theodore had given her the address. The love nest Derek had maintained for 18 months, where he had lived a parallel life with Vanessa Clark, while Charlotte believed he was working late or traveling for business. She went alone, didn't tell Maggie. This was something she needed to do herself. The building was nice, upper middle class, the kind of place a young professional might live. Not luxury, but comfortable. Charlotte used the key she'd found in Derek's hidden folder. Let herself in. The apartment was half empty. Vanessa had moved out quickly, according to Theodore's sources, relocated to another city for a new job, running away from the scandal, from Derek, from the mess they had created together. Charlotte walked through the room slowly, taking in the evidence of the life her husband had built without her. The bedroom. King-size bed with expensive sheets. Photographs on the nightstand. Derek smiling, Vanessa smiling. A happiness Charlotte had never seen in her own marriage. The kitchen, dishes in the sink, wine glasses, the remnants of a life interrupted. The closet. Some of Derek's clothes still hung there, things Charlotte recognized. The blue shirt she'd given him for his birthday. The tie he'd worn to her mother's funeral. He had worn her gift to Vanessa's apartment, had probably come straight here after serving Charlotte divorce papers at the cemetery. The anger rose again, hotter now, more focused. She had been such a fool, such a naive, trusting fool. Derek had never loved her, had probably never loved anyone but himself. Charlotte was a means to an end, a source of stability while he pursued pleasure elsewhere. And the baby, their baby. What would Derek have done when the child was born? Would he have played the role of devoted father while continuing his affairs? Would he have taught their son or daughter that lying was acceptable, that betrayal was normal? Thank God Charlotte had found out before the birth. Thank God her child would never know that man as a father. She left the apartment, locked the door behind her, threw the key into a storm drain. Derek's past was dead to her. All that mattered now was the future. The news broke 3 weeks after the funeral. Meridian Pharmaceuticals' heir revealed. The headline splashed across every business publication and news website. Charlotte Weston inherits $900 million following mother's secret. Double life. Charlotte's phone exploded. Calls from reporters, messages from old friends, emails from distant relatives she hadn't heard from in years. Everyone wanted something. A quote, a connection, a piece of her sudden fortune. She turned off her phone, let Theodore's office handle the media inquiries, and waited. Derek found out exactly 4 hours and 23 minutes after the news broke. Charlotte knew because Theodore was monitoring the situation. Had people watching Derek's movements, tracking his reactions. He's on his way to your house, Theodore reported by phone. Left his apartment at 11:47. Should arrive within 20 minutes. Charlotte looked around the living room. At the evidence of Derek's betrayal spread across the coffee table. At the lawyers that Theodore had sent to keep her safe. Let him come, she said. I'm ready. The doorbell rang 18 minutes later. Maggie answered. Charlotte could hear the confrontation from the living room. She doesn't want to see you. This is my house. I have every right to be here. It's her house. The mortgage is in her name. Always has been. A scuffle. Derek pushing past. Maggie's protest ignored. He appeared in the living room doorway. Red-faced. Breathing hard. Eyes wild with something between desperation and greed. Charlie, we need to talk. She looked at him. Really looked. Saw him clearly for maybe the first time. Expensive suit that he couldn't afford. Hair carefully styled to hide the thinning. The beginning of jowls around his jaw. Not the handsome young man who had charmed her 8 years ago. A middle-aged failure grasping at other people's success. Sit down, Derek. He sat. The lawyer shifted to flank Charlotte. A silent show of support. This is insane, Derek began. $900 million. Your mother was worth $900 million, and you never told me. I didn't know. How could you not know? His voice rose, accusatory. You grew up with her. You were her only daughter. How could you possibly not know? Because she hid it from everyone, including me. Derek shook his head, disbelief mixing with something uglier. This changes everything. You understand that, right? This changes absolutely everything. No, Derek, it doesn't change anything. Charlotte's voice was steady, calm. You served me divorce papers at my mother's funeral. You moved out without warning. You've been cheating on me for years. None of that changes just because I inherited money. I made a mistake. His tone shifted, softer now, pleading. I was confused, stressed about work. I didn't know what I was doing. You knew exactly what you were doing. You calculated every move, waited for my mother to die because you thought that's when I'd be weakest, most vulnerable, most likely to give you whatever you wanted. Derek's mask slipped. For just a moment, Charlotte saw the truth underneath. The cold calculation, the mercenary evaluation. Then the mask returned, the charming smile, the apologetic eyes. Let me make this right. We can work through this. Couples survive worse things than what we've been through. Charlotte stood, slowly, her pregnant belly leading the way. Here's what's going to happen, Derek. The divorce will proceed on my terms. You will receive nothing, no settlement, no claim to my inheritance, no custody of our child. You can't, I can, and I will. Charlotte gestured to one of the lawyers. Mr. Weston, meet my legal team. They have documentation of every affair you've had during our marriage, every lie you've told, every dollar you've hidden or stolen or wasted on other women. The lawyer opened a folder, began laying out photographs, credit card statements, the apartment lease, the engagement ring receipt. Derek's face went pale, then red, then pale again. How did you? My mother. She investigated you before we even got married. She knew what you were. She documented everything. Charlotte watched the realization hit him, the understanding that he had never fooled Eleanor, that his entire marriage had been observed and recorded and preserved for exactly this moment. She hated me, Derek said. Your mother always hated me. She didn't hate you, she pitied you. There's a difference. The lawyers gathered the documents, returned them to the folder. Your divorce petition will proceed as filed, Theodore spoke now, from his position by the window. You initiated the dissolution of marriage. You vacated the marital home. You've documented your own intention to leave. The court will honor that intention. I want to renegotiate. The circumstances have changed. The circumstances haven't changed, Mr. Weston. You married Charlotte without knowing about her mother's wealth. You're divorcing Charlotte without claiming that wealth. Nothing has changed except your understanding of what you threw away. Derek stood. His hands were shaking. His voice cracked. This isn't over. I'll fight this. I have rights. You have the right to a divorce, Charlotte said. That's exactly what you're going to get. She walked to the front door, opened it, stood waiting. Derek looked at her, at the lawyers, at the evidence of his own betrayal spread across the coffee table. I did love you, he said, at the beginning, before everything got so complicated. Charlotte met his eyes, saw nothing there she recognized, nothing worth saving. Maybe you did, but your love came with conditions, with calculations, with escape plans and other women in secret apartments. That's not the love I deserved. That's not the love anyone deserves. Derek walked past her, paused at the threshold. You'll regret this. When the lawyers are done and the dust settles, you'll realize you made a mistake. Charlotte smiled. It wasn't a kind smile. No, Derek. The only mistake I made was marrying you, and I'm correcting that now. She closed the door, turned the deadbolt, leaned against the wood until his footsteps faded. Maggie appeared at her side. You okay? No, Charlotte admitted, but I will be. She pressed her hand against her belly, felt her daughter kick in response. We will be. Derek's world began to collapse the same day he left Charlotte's house. She didn't know this immediately, didn't see the dominoes falling one by one. But Theodore kept her informed, updates arriving like dispatches from a distant war. Robert Weston called his son to the office the morning after the news broke. Derek's father, real estate mogul, self-made millionaire, a man who had built his fortune through hard work and strategic thinking, a man who had no patience for fools. The meeting was brief. According to Theodore's sources, Derek emerged ashen-faced, shaking, like a man who had just received a terminal diagnosis, which in a way he had. Robert had laid it out clearly. The family embarrassment was unacceptable. Serving divorce papers at a funeral, being publicly revealed as a cheater, throwing away a connection to $900 million through sheer stupidity. You're not my son anymore, Robert had reportedly said. You're a cautionary tale. The financial consequences followed immediately. Robert had been supporting Derek for years, loans that never got repaid, debts quietly covered. A steady stream of money to maintain the lifestyle Derek pretended to afford. That stream was now dry. Theodore obtained copies of the documents, nearly $400,000 that Robert was demanding back, with interest, within 90 days. Derek didn't have it, had never had it. His entire life had been built on borrowed money and borrowed time. Now both had run out. Charlotte read the reports without satisfaction. She had expected to feel something, triumph perhaps, justice served. Instead, she felt only a deep exhaustion, a weariness that went beyond pregnancy fatigue. Derek's suffering didn't undo her pain. His losses didn't restore what she had lost. The karma was appropriate, even poetic. But it changed nothing about Charlotte's own situation. She was still a pregnant woman navigating a divorce, still grieving her mother, still trying to understand an empire she had never known existed. Derek's downfall was just background noise. Vanessa's departure was confirmed the same week. She had taken the job in Boston, left Derek without a backward glance. Their relationship apparently hadn't survived the revelation that Derek was a liability rather than an asset. Gold diggers, Charlotte reflected, don't dig in empty mines. Derek tried calling from new numbers. Charlotte blocked each one. He tried showing up at the house. The security team Theodore had hired turned him away. His lawyer's letters became increasingly desperate. Demands for negotiation, requests for mediation, threats of court action that had no legal basis. Theodore responded to each with calm, devastating documentation. Evidence of Derek's infidelities, records of his hidden debts, proof of his calculated cruelty. The case was airtight. Derek had no leverage and no hope of gaining any, but he kept trying. Men like Derek always keep trying, unable to accept defeat, unable to admit they've lost. Charlotte stopped reading the updates, stopped caring what Derek did or didn't do. He was her past now, and she had to focus on the future. The future meant learning how to run a pharmaceutical empire. The board of directors convened a formal meeting 3 weeks after the inheritance was announced. 11 members seated around a polished conference table. 11 faces watching Charlotte with varying degrees of skepticism. She was 8 months pregnant now, huge and uncomfortable and more tired than she had ever been in her life. But she showed up anyway, dressed professionally, prepared extensively, ready to prove she was more than just Eleanor's daughter. "Thank you all for coming," she began. Her voice was steady despite her racing heart. "I know you have questions about the future of Meridian, about my plans, about whether the company is in good hands." No one spoke. The skepticism remained. "I'm not going to pretend I know everything about pharmaceuticals. I don't. I'm a graphic designer, not a chemist. I never went to business school. I never managed anything larger than a freelance operation." Still silence. Charlotte pressed on. "But I know how to learn. I know how to listen. And I know that my mother built this company for a reason, not just to make money, but to help people. Every drug we develop, every treatment we manufacture, saves lives. That matters more than quarterly projections or stock valuations." The CFO cleared his throat. "Mrs. Weston, with respect, pharmaceutical development requires technical expertise, market analysis, regulatory navigation. It's not something you can learn from books." "No, it isn't. That's why I have all of you." Charlotte looked around the table. "You're the experts. You've been running this company for years. You know things I couldn't learn in a lifetime. I'm not here to replace you. I'm here to support you." "Then what's your role?" Another board member, skepticism dripping from every word. "To make sure we never lose sight of why we're here. My mother started Meridian to help people. That mission has to remain central to everything we do." The room fell quiet. Then slowly the CFO nodded. That's exactly what Eleanor would have said. The meeting continued for 3 hours. Charlotte listened more than she spoke, learned more than she taught. But by the end, something had shifted. The board members still had reservations, but they no longer looked at her like a problem to be solved. They looked at her like a potential partner. Progress. Small, but significant. Back home that evening, Charlotte collapsed onto the couch. Her back ached, her feet were swollen. The baby was kicking with what felt like Olympic-level enthusiasm. Maggie brought tea, sat beside her, didn't speak for several minutes. "You did good today," she finally said. "Theodore told me about the meeting. I barely did anything, just talked about mission statements and listening to experts. That's leadership, Charlie. Knowing what you don't know, surrounding yourself with people who fill the gaps." Charlotte sipped her tea. Let the warmth spread through her chest. "I keep waiting for someone to realize I'm faking it, to call me out as a fraud." Everyone feels that way. Every leader, every executive, every person who's ever been thrust into something bigger than themselves. Maggie squeezed her hand. "The fraud is the one who pretends to know everything. You're being honest about your limitations. That's strength." Charlotte wanted to believe her, wanted to feel strong and capable and ready for what was coming. But the truth was simpler. She was terrified of being a mother, of running a company, of facing a world that suddenly saw her as someone worth $900 million. The old Charlotte would have crumbled under this pressure, would have let Derek handle everything, would have hidden behind someone else's decisions. But the old Charlotte was dead, buried alongside her mother, destroyed by divorce papers at a graveside. The new Charlotte had no choice but to rise. Later that night, alone in her room, Charlotte opened her mother's journal again, found an entry from 2 years before. "I'm getting sicker. The doctors won't say it directly, but I can read between the lines. The cancer is spreading. Treatment can slow it down, but not stop it. I need to prepare. Not just the legal documents, though those are important. I need to prepare Charlotte. Need to somehow make her ready for what's coming without telling her what's coming. She's stronger than she knows. That's always been true. She just doesn't believe it yet. Doesn't trust her own abilities. Doesn't see the brilliance underneath her self-doubt. Derek doesn't help. He's always subtly undermining her, making her feel small, making her dependent on his approval. Classic manipulation tactics, though Charlotte doesn't recognize them. I want to shake her sometimes, want to scream, "You deserve better than this." But she has to realize it herself, has to find her own strength. I can't give it to her. I can only hope she discovers it before it's too late. Charlotte closed the journal, let the tears flow freely. Her mother had been dying, had known for years that the end was coming. And instead of focusing on herself, Eleanor had worried about Charlotte, had tried to prepare her, to strengthen her, to give her the tools she would need to survive. It had worked, not completely, not perfectly, but it had worked. Charlotte was surviving, was more than surviving, was becoming someone her mother would recognize, would be proud of. I'm doing it, Mom, she thought. I'm finding the strength you always said I had. The baby kicked, a strong movement, like punctuation. Yes, the kick seemed to say. Yes, you are. The first contraction hit at 3:17 in the morning. Charlotte woke from a dream about her mother. Eleanor had been younger in the dream, healthier, standing in a garden full of white roses. You're ready now, Eleanor had said. Remember that. When it gets hard, remember that you're ready. Then the pain had torn through her, sharp and unmistakable. Charlotte gasped, sat up in bed, pressed her hands against her belly. Too early. The baby wasn't due for 6 more weeks. This couldn't be real. Another contraction, stronger than the first. Charlotte cried out. The house was dark, silent. Maggie was supposed to be in the guest room, but she had gone home for the first time in weeks. Just one night, she had promised. Just one night to handle her own affairs. Charlotte was alone. She fumbled for her phone. Her fingers were shaking too badly to dial. She dropped it, heard it clatter onto the hardwood floor. Another contraction. The pain radiated from her lower back through her entire body. She bent double, couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Something was wrong. This was too intense, too fast. Something was very wrong. Charlotte slid out of bed. Her legs barely supported her weight. She stumbled toward the door, toward the stairs, toward her phone on the floor. Fell. She hit the hardwood on her knees. The impact sent shockwaves through her body. The baby kicked frantically, panicked. Charlotte crawled, inch by inch, toward the glow of her phone screen on the floor. Another contraction. She collapsed, pressed her face against the cold wood, waited for the pain to pass. Please. The word formed in her mind, not a prayer exactly, just desperation. Please let my baby be okay. She reached the phone, dialed 911 with trembling fingers. 911, what's your emergency? I'm pregnant, 7.5 months, having contractions. Something's wrong. Ma'am, what's your address? Charlotte gave it, heard herself speaking as if from a great distance. Help is on the way. Stay on the line with me. Is anyone there with you? No, I'm alone. The words hung in the darkness. The truth of her situation. 8 months pregnant, $900 million, and completely, utterly alone. The ambulance arrived in 11 minutes. Charlotte spent them on the floor, counting between contractions, trying not to panic. The paramedics were kind, professional. They loaded her onto a stretcher with gentle efficiency, started an IV in the ambulance, asked questions she could barely answer. The hospital was bright and loud after the darkness of her home. Nurses swarmed, monitors beeped. A doctor appeared and disappeared. Dr. Harrison arrived 20 minutes later. Charlotte's obstetrician since the beginning of her pregnancy. Gray hair and kind eyes and a calm that seemed unshakable. The contractions are real, he said after examining her. But we can stop them. You're not dilating yet. The baby isn't in immediate danger. Relief, so powerful it made her dizzy. We're going to keep you here for observation. At least a few days, possibly longer. And Charlotte, he paused. His expression grew serious. The stress is affecting your pregnancy. Your blood pressure is elevated. The baby is responding to your emotional state. You need to rest, really rest, or we could have serious complications. Charlotte nodded. She knew, had known for weeks, the divorce, the inheritance, the constant pressure. Her body had been screaming at her to slow down. She hadn't listened. Now she had no choice. They moved her to a private room. The best the hospital had. Theodore's doing, probably. Or the magic of being worth $900 million. Charlotte lay in the bed, monitors strapped to her belly, listening to her baby's heartbeat through the machine. Fast and strong. A rhythm that was the only comfort in this sterile room. She was so tired, bone-deep exhausted in a way sleep couldn't fix. The pregnancy, the grief, the betrayal, the constant, relentless pressure of becoming someone new. It had finally caught up with her. Maggie arrived 2 hours later, breathless and terrified. She had driven from the other side of the city in record time. "I'm so sorry," she kept saying. "I should have stayed. I should have been there. You can't be with me every minute. You have your own life. My life can wait. You're more important." Charlotte squeezed her friend's hand, didn't have the energy to argue. The days that followed blurred together. Tests, medications, doctors coming and going with updates that all said the same thing. Rest, reduce stress, take care of yourself. Easier said than done when your life was a hurricane. Theodore visited on the third day, bringing flowers and updates on the divorce proceedings. Derek's lawyers filed a motion for asset discovery. They want access to all your financial records. Charlotte closed her eyes. Can they do that? They can try, but our documentation of his behavior is extensive. No judge is going to award him a cent of your inheritance when we can prove he was planning to divorce you before he knew it existed. So we wait. We wait, and we win. Theo left. Charlotte stared at the ceiling, tried to find some peace in the endless beeping of machines. On the fourth day, she asked Maggie to bring her mother's journal. Reading was the only thing that helped. Eleanor's words, her mother's voice in her head, the sense of connection to someone who was gone, but not completely gone. Charlotte found an entry she hadn't read before, from 5 years ago, around the time of her miscarriage. Charlotte lost the pregnancy today. She called me crying so hard she couldn't breathe. I wanted to go to her, to hold her, to make it better somehow. But Derek answered when I arrived, said Charlotte was resting, said she didn't want visitors. I could hear her crying in the bedroom, could hear the pain through the walls. He didn't let me in, stood at the door with that smile that never reaches his eyes, and told me my daughter needed space. I've never hated anyone in my life, but in that moment I hated Derek Weston with every fiber of my being. He's isolating her, cutting her off from support, making himself her only source of comfort. Classic abuse tactics, though there's no physical violence. The damage is all psychological, all invisible. I should tell her, should force the confrontation, should make her see what's happening. But if I push too hard, I'll lose her. He's already convinced her that I'm overprotective, that my concerns are just a mother's jealousy. One wrong move, and he'll cut me out completely. So I wait, and I watch. And I pray that someday she'll see the truth. God help her. God help us both. Charlotte set down the journal. Her hands were trembling. She remembered that day, the miscarriage, the aftermath, Derek's insistence that she needed rest, his gentle suggestions that too many visitors would be overwhelming. She had thought he was protecting her, being considerate, looking out for her needs. He had been isolating her, controlling access to her support system, making sure she depended only on him. How had she not seen it? How had she been so blind? Because you trusted him, a voice in her head answered. Because that's what love looks like when you don't know any better. But she knew better now, could see the patterns clearly, the subtle manipulation, the gradual isolation, the way Derek had made himself essential while slowly cutting her off from everyone else. Classic abuse tactics. Her mother had named it, had seen it happening, had been powerless to stop it. And Charlotte had been the victim without even knowing it. The realization broke something inside her. Not in a destructive way, in a liberating way, like setting down a weight she didn't know she had been carrying. She wasn't stupid, wasn't weak, wasn't deserving of what had happened to her. She was a victim of calculated manipulation by someone she had trusted, someone who had studied her weaknesses and exploited them systematically. The shame she had been carrying began to lift, replaced by something fiercer, something that felt like self-respect. I deserve better than this. The thought formed clearly in her mind. I always deserve better, and I'm going to make sure I get it from now on. The baby kicked, strong and insistent. Yes, the kick seemed to say, yes, you are. Dr. Harrison released Charlotte from the hospital after 5 days. Strict orders for bed rest, no stress, no conflict, nothing that could trigger another episode. Easier said than done. But Charlotte tried. She let Maggie handle the daily decisions. Let Theodore manage the legal battles. Let the board of directors run Meridian without her constant input. She focused instead on healing, on reading, on preparing for the baby who would arrive sooner than expected. The nursery was almost ready, pale yellow walls because she hadn't wanted to know the baby's sex. White furniture that Eleanor had helped her pick out before the cancer made shopping impossible. A mobile of silver stars that played a soft lullaby. Charlotte wound it up every night, let the music fill the room, imagined her daughter listening to it while falling asleep. Daughter, she had learned the sex during the hospital stay, had needed to know suddenly, had needed some certainty in a world full of chaos. A girl, a little girl who would carry on Eleanor's legacy, who would inherit not just the money but the strength, the intelligence, the fierce determination that had built an empire from nothing. Charlotte had already chosen a name. Eleanor, after her mother, after the woman who had protected her even when she didn't know she needed protection. Eleanor Margaret Weston, a name heavy with meaning, with history, with hope. 2 weeks into bed rest, Charlotte asked Maggie to bring her mother's things. Not all of them, just the personal items, the jewelry box, the photo albums, the small treasures Eleanor had kept close. She needed to feel connected, to remember the woman behind the fortune. Maggie brought everything in cardboard boxes. Charlotte sorted through them slowly. One item at a time, each one a memory, each one a goodbye. Her mother's wedding ring. Simple gold band, worn smooth by 40 years of daily use. Charlotte slipped it onto her own finger. A perfect fit, as if it had been waiting for her. Photo albums from Charlotte's childhood. Birthday parties and graduations, and ordinary Tuesdays preserved in fading color. Eleanor smiling in every picture, always smiling. And at the bottom of one box, an envelope, sealed. Charlotte's name on the front, another letter. She had found the first one in Theodore's office. This was different. This one had been hidden here, among personal items, meant to be found by someone going through her things. Charlotte opened it with trembling hands. My darling Charlotte, if you're reading this, you're going through my belongings, which means I'm gone and you're finally looking deeper. This letter is different from the one Theodore gave you. That one was about the company, the money, the inheritance. This one is about you. I've watched you for 32 years, watched you grow from a baby into a woman, and I've seen things about you that you don't see in yourself. You are kind, genuinely, deeply kind, not performatively, not for approval, but because kindness is who you are. You are smart, not just book smart, though you're that too. You have emotional intelligence. You understand people. You see beneath surface. You are strong, stronger than you know, stronger than Derek ever let you be. I've watched you face difficulties with grace. I've watched you survive losses that would break lesser people. But most importantly, you are worthy. Worthy of love, worthy of respect, worthy of everything good this world has to offer. I don't think you believe that yet. Derek spent years convincing you otherwise, making you feel small, making you feel like you needed him to be complete. That was a lie. You have always been complete. You just forgot. So this is my final gift to you. Not the money, not the company, but permission. Permission to believe in yourself, to trust your own judgment, to build a life that makes you happy, whatever that looks like. You don't need anyone's approval, not Derek's, not the world's, not even mine. You just need to remember who you are. I love you, Charlotte. I have always loved you. I will always love you. And wherever I am, whatever comes next, I'll be watching, cheering you on, believing in you the way I always have. Go be brilliant, my darling girl. Love forever, Mom. Charlotte read the letter 3 times, let the words sink into her bones. Permission. Her mother had given her permission to believe in herself. It sounded simple, almost silly. Of course she had permission to believe in herself. She was an adult. She didn't need anyone's approval. But the truth was more complicated. Derek had spent years undermining her confidence, making her doubt her own perceptions, convincing her that she needed him to navigate the world. The damage wasn't obvious, wasn't visible, but it was there, embedded in the way she second-guessed herself, in the way she apologized for having opinions, in the way she automatically deferred to others. Eleanor had seen it, had documented it in her journal, had tried in her own way to counter it. And now, with this letter, she was giving Charlotte the tools to heal. You just need to remember who you are. Who was she? Before Derek, before the wedding, before she had made herself small to fit into someone else's life. Charlotte closed her eyes, tried to remember. She had been ambitious once, had dreamed of starting her own design firm, of creating something meaningful, of building a career she could be proud of. Derek had convinced her that was unrealistic, had suggested she scale back her expectations, had gently steered her toward freelance work that kept her dependent on him for health insurance and stability. She had been confident once, had trusted her own judgment, had made decisions without constant second-guessing. Derek had questioned everything she did, had pointed out flaws in her reasoning, had made her feel like she needed his input to make even simple choices. She had been social once, had a wide circle of friends, had spent weekends at gatherings and events and parties. Derek had been uncomfortable at those events, had encouraged her to decline invitations, had gradually isolated her until Maggie was the only friend left. Charlotte saw the pattern clearly now, the systematic dismantling of her identity, the slow erosion of everything that made her who she was. But the erosion could be reversed, the damage could be healed. The woman she used to be was still there, underneath the layers of manipulation. She just needed to dig her out. Charlotte opened her eyes, looked around her mother's room, at the evidence of a double life lived with purpose and determination. Eleanor had been fearless, had built an empire while raising a daughter and maintaining the fiction of an ordinary life, had faced cancer with grace and died with secrets still intact. That fearlessness was in Charlotte's DNA. She just needed to access it. Starting now, she picked up her phone, called Theodore. I want to resume the board meetings, video conference while I'm on bed rest. I want weekly updates on all company operations. Charlotte, the doctor said no stress. Learning about my mother's company isn't stressful. It's empowering. A pause, then Theodore laughed softly. You sound like Eleanor. Good, that's exactly who I'm trying to be. The first board meeting via video call was awkward. Charlotte propped up in bed with pillows and blankets and a laptop balanced on her pregnant belly. But she was there, present, engaged. She asked questions, challenged assumptions, pushed back on decisions that didn't align with the company's mission. The board members were surprised. They had expected the hospital stay to sideline her. Instead, she came back fiercer than before. The European expansion, Charlotte said during one meeting. I've reviewed the projections. We're overextending. The head of international operations looked skeptical. The numbers support aggressive growth. The numbers support optimistic scenarios. What happens if anything goes wrong? What's our contingency? Silence around the virtual conference table. The head of international operations shifted uncomfortably. I'm not saying we shouldn't expand, Charlotte continued. I'm saying we should do it carefully. Consolidate what we have. Build a stronger foundation before we push further. The CFO spoke up. Your mother would have said exactly the same thing. She was always cautious about international markets. Charlotte nodded. She hadn't known that, hadn't had the chance to learn her mother's business philosophies, but apparently they had inherited more than genes. The meeting ended with a revised expansion plan. More conservative, more sustainable, more in line with what Eleanor would have wanted. Charlotte closed her laptop, feeling something she hadn't felt in years. Capable. She felt capable. Not because someone told her she was, but because she had proven it to herself. Meanwhile, Derek continued his downward spiral. Theodore's updates painted a bleak picture. The apartment Derek had rented was too expensive. He couldn't make rent. His father's deadline for repayment was approaching. His credit cards were maxed. The life of luxury Derek had built on borrowed money and borrowed time was collapsing. Charlotte felt nothing, not satisfaction, not pity, just distance. Derek had made his choices, had calculated his moves, had played games with people's lives and emotions. Now he was paying the price, not because Charlotte sought revenge, but because actions have consequences. Because you can't build a life on lies and expect it to last. Justice, not karma, not punishment, just the natural order of things asserting itself. Charlotte turned her attention to what mattered. Her baby, her company, her future. Derek could handle his own mess. She had better things to do. Derek made his final desperate move 3 weeks before Charlotte's due date. She was 9 months pregnant now. enormous and uncomfortable and more ready than ever to meet her daughter. The bed rest had ended 2 weeks prior. Dr. Harrison had pronounced her stable. The baby was strong. The danger had passed. Charlotte had used the time well, had learned more about Meridian than most of the board members knew, had begun to form her own vision for the company's future. She was becoming a pharmaceutical executive, not by choice, not by training, but by necessity. And surprisingly, she was good at it. The doorbell rang on a Tuesday afternoon. Charlotte was in the living room reviewing quarterly projections. Maggie was in the kitchen making lunch. "I'll get it," Maggie called. Charlotte heard the door open, heard Maggie's sharp intake of breath. "You have to be kidding me." Derek's voice, calm, practiced. "I just want to talk. 5 minutes. That's all." Charlotte stood slowly. Her pregnant belly made everything difficult now. Walking, sitting, breathing. She moved to the hallway, saw Derek standing on her porch, flowers in his hand, an expression of carefully constructed remorse on his face. "Let him in," Charlotte said. Maggie whipped around. "Are you insane? I want to hear what he has to say. One last time." Derek stepped inside, looked around at the house he had once called home. His eyes lingered on the expensive art Eleanor had quietly collected, the antique furniture, the evidence of wealth he had never suspected. "You look well," he said to Charlotte. "Pregnancy suits you." She didn't respond to the compliment. "What do you want, Derek?" "To apologize, properly, face to face." He set the flowers on the hall table. "I made terrible mistakes. I see that now. Everything that happened, the divorce papers, the timing, it was inexcusable." "Yes, it was. But I was under pressure. Work stress, financial stress. I wasn't thinking clearly." He stepped closer, his voice dropped to something intimate. "I never stopped loving you, Charlotte. Even when I was making all those wrong choices." Charlotte studied him, tried to see the man she had married, the charming stranger who had swept her off her feet 8 years ago. He was still there. The smile, the apologetic eyes, the words designed to disarm and manipulate. But she could see through it now, could see the calculation beneath the charm, the self-interest beneath the apology. "You don't love me, Derek. You never did." "That's not true. You loved what I represented. Stability, respectability, a safe harbor for your debts and your secrets." Charlotte's voice remained steady. "When you thought that harbor was running dry, you left. When you learned it was actually an ocean, you came back." Derek's mask flickered, a flash of irritation beneath the remorse. "I didn't know about the money. You have to believe that." "I do believe that. That's what makes it so clear." Charlotte walked to the living room, let him follow. "You calculated everything based on what you thought you knew. You waited for my mother to because you thought that's when I'd be weakest, when I'd have the least support, when I'd be most likely to give you whatever you wanted." She sat down on the couch. Let him stand, a subtle power dynamic she had learned from watching the board members interact. "You underestimated me. You underestimated my mother. And now you are paying the price." Derek's facade cracked further. "I made mistakes. Everyone makes mistakes, but we had 8 years together. Doesn't that count for anything? 8 years of lies, 8 years of manipulation, 8 years of you cheating and hiding and making me feel crazy for questioning what I could feel was wrong." Charlotte shook her head. "Those years count against you, Derek. Not for you." He changed tactics, dropped to his knees beside the couch, reached for her hand. "Charlotte, please. I'm desperate. My father cut me off. Vanessa left. I have nothing. No money, no support, no one in my corner. You're the only one who can help me." Charlotte pulled her hand away. "And there it is, the real reason you're here. I'm begging you. We were married. We're having a child together. Doesn't that obligate you to help me? We're not having anything together. I'm having a child. You're having consequences." She stood, walked to the window, looked out at the garden Eleanor had helped her plant years ago. "Here's what's going to happen, Derek. I'm going to show you something. And then you're going to leave, and you're never going to contact me again." She nodded to Theodore, who had arrived silently while Derek was on his knees. He pressed play on a recording device. Derek's voice filled the room, tinny, distant, but unmistakable. Yeah, I'm just waiting for the old bat to die. Charlotte's useless without her mother's pension helping out. Once Eleanor's gone, I'll file papers. Get out clean. Vanessa and I have plans. Derek's face drained of color. That was recorded 3 years ago. By a private investigator my mother hired. Charlotte turned from the window, met his eyes. She knew what you were, Derek. She documented everything. She was just waiting for me to see it myself. The recording continued. More damning snippets. Derek discussing his debts, his affairs, his contempt for the wife he claimed to love. When it finally ended, the silence was absolute. You called my mother the old bat, Charlotte said softly, while she was dying of cancer, while she was spending every moment she had left trying to protect me from you. Derek opened his mouth, closed it. No words came. Your divorce petition will proceed as filed, Theodore spoke now, cold and professional. You'll receive nothing, no settlement, no claim to the inheritance, supervised visitation with the child if you choose to exercise it. This isn't, you can't. I am. Charlotte walked to the front door, opened it. Goodbye, Derek. He stood slowly. His legs seemed unsteady. His face was gray. I made mistakes, he said again. His voice was barely a whisper. But I did love you. At the beginning, before everything got so complicated. Charlotte considered this, searched herself for any remaining doubt, found none. Maybe you did, but your love came with conditions, with escape plans, with secret apartments and other women and recordings of you calling my dying mother names. She shook her head. That's not love, Derek. That's ownership, and I don't belong to you anymore. He walked past her, paused at the threshold, turned back one final time. You'll regret this. When the anger fades, when you're raising a child alone, you'll wish you had given me another chance, Charlotte smiled, not kindly. No, the only regret I have is the 8 years I wasted believing in you, and I'm done wasting time. She closed the door, turned the deadbolt, listened to his footsteps fade down the driveway. It was over. Finally, completely over. Charlotte pressed her back against the door, let herself breathe. Maggie appeared. You okay? Yeah. Charlotte was surprised to find it was true. I really am. She pressed her hand against her belly, felt her daughter move. We're both going to be okay. The baby came exactly when she was meant to, at 3:17 in the morning. Charlotte smiled when she saw the time on the clock. The same hour her false labor had struck weeks ago. The same moment of panic in the darkness. But everything was different now. The contractions had started gently, just after midnight. Charlotte had been reading her mother's journal, unable to sleep, lost in Eleanor's words. She had timed them carefully. 6 minutes apart, then 5, then 4. Maggie, she had called at 2:30. It's time. The drive to the hospital was calm, almost peaceful. Empty streets reflecting streetlights. The world asleep while Charlotte's body did the work it had been preparing for. Maggie told terrible jokes the whole way, trying to distract, trying to help. What do you call a factory that makes okay products? A satisfactory. Charlotte groaned, then laughed, then groaned again as another contraction hit. That's terrible. I know, I saved the worst ones for labor. The hospital staff was ready. Dr. Harrison met them at the entrance. His calm presence was exactly what Charlotte needed. Everything looks perfect, he said after examining her. This baby knows what she's doing. We just need to let her do it. The hours that followed were the hardest of Charlotte's life, and the most meaningful. Pain like nothing she had ever experienced, but also purpose, focus, the primal knowledge that her body was doing something miraculous. Maggie stayed the whole time, held her hand through the worst contractions, wiped her forehead, told more terrible jokes. What's the best thing about Switzerland? I don't know, but the flag is a big plus. Charlotte laughed through her tears, through her screaming, through the endless waves of pain that were bringing her daughter into the world. At the final push, she thought of her mother, imagined Eleanor beside her, coaching her, encouraging her. You're stronger than you know, remember that. And then, at precisely 3:17 in the morning, a cry, high and sharp and perfect. It's a girl, Dr. Harrison announced, as if Charlotte didn't already know, hadn't known for months, hadn't been waiting for this exact moment. They placed the baby on her chest, 7 pounds, 4 ounces, red-faced and screaming and absolutely perfect. 10 fingers, 10 toes, a bow mouth that would never stop talking, dark hair plastered to her tiny skull. Charlotte looked down at her daughter. Her daughter. The word felt too big, too important, too wonderful. "Hello," she whispered. "Hello, Eleanor. I've been waiting for you." The baby stopped crying, opened her eyes, dark blue like all newborns, but something in them already looked familiar. Eleanor's chin, stubborn, determined, a chin that said, "I will not be moved." Charlotte's eyes, wide and curious, taking in everything, a perfect combination, a fresh start, a new beginning. "She's beautiful," Maggie said. She was crying openly now, not bothering to hide it. "She's so beautiful, Charlie." Charlotte couldn't speak. The emotion was too big for words. She had done it, had survived Derek's betrayal, had navigated her mother's death, had learned to run a pharmaceutical empire, had faced down her ex-husband and won. And now she had brought a new life into the world, a life she would protect and nurture and raise with all the love she had to give. "Eleanor Margaret Weston," Charlotte finally managed. "That's her name." Maggie's sobs grew louder. "You don't have to." "I want to." She needs strong women's names to live up to. Charlotte kissed her daughter's forehead, and she's going to live up to them. I know she is. The next few days passed in a blur of feedings and changings and visitors, the hospital room filled with flowers. Theodore came with legal documents that could definitely wait. Board members sent congratulations and gift baskets. But Charlotte barely noticed in any of it. Her entire world had narrowed to 7 pounds of perfect humanity. Eleanor, her daughter, her miracle. On the third day, a nurse came to help with breastfeeding. Colleen Bradley, 52 years old, warm eyes and gentle hands and 30 years of experience. "You're doing great," Colleen said. "Natural talent. Some mothers struggle for weeks. You've got it down already." Charlotte didn't feel like she had anything down. She felt overwhelmed and terrified and more in love than she had ever been in her life. But she was doing it, one feeding at a time, one diaper at a time, one moment at a time. That night, after Maggie had gone home and the nurses had dimmed the lights, Charlotte lay in the hospital bed with Eleanor sleeping on her chest. The weight of her daughter, the warmth, the tiny heartbeat matching her own. This was what her mother had wanted for her. Not just the money or the company. This, the experience of loving something so completely that nothing else mattered. "I wish you could see her," Charlotte whispered into the darkness. "She looks like you. That stubborn chin, that determined expression." The room was silent except for Eleanor's soft breathing. "I'm going to raise her differently than I was raised. Not that you did anything wrong. But she's going to know about the company from the beginning, about the responsibility, about the power she'll have, and how to use it wisely." Eleanor stirred, made a small sound, settled back into sleep. "And I'm going to teach her about love, real love. Not the kind Derek offered, not conditional, not calculated, the kind that gives without expecting return, the kind you showed me every day of my life." Charlotte kissed her daughter's head, smelled the newborn scent that everyone said faded too fast. "We're going to be okay, little one. Better than okay, we're going to be extraordinary, because that's what your grandmother would have expected, and I'm not going to let her down." 1 year later, Charlotte stood at Eleanor's grave, the anniversary of her mother's burial, the anniversary of the worst and best day of her life. September again, the same cemetery, the same headstone, with Eleanor Weston carved in granite. But everything else had changed. Baby Eleanor sat on Charlotte's hip, 1 year old now, walking and babbling and getting into everything, a force of nature in a tiny body. "Hi, Mom," Charlotte said. She laid white roses on the grave, Eleanor's favorite. The baby reached for the flowers, grabbed a petal, laughed at the softness. "She's amazing. You'd love her so much. She has your stubbornness, your determination. She doesn't cry when she falls down anymore, just picks herself up and keeps going." Charlotte shifted Eleanor to her other hip. The baby was getting heavy, growing so fast. Meridian is doing well. We're expanding carefully, like you would have wanted. 3 new markets this year. The charitable foundation funded 20 research grants. I built a wing at the Children's Hospital in your name. A breeze rustled through the trees, carrying autumn leaves, carrying something else too. A presence Charlotte couldn't see but could feel. I understand now, Mom, why you did what you did. You weren't hiding the money from me. You were giving me time. Time to become someone who could handle it. Someone who could carry the responsibility without being crushed by it. Baby Eleanor grabbed Charlotte's necklace, the simple gold chain with her grandmother's wedding ring on it. I wear your ring every day, and Dad's ring is in the safe, for when Eleanor's older, for when she can understand what it means. Charlotte had learned more about her father this past year, had found photographs and letters in Eleanor's belongings. Richard Weston, brilliant chemist like his wife, dead at 32 in a car accident that had destroyed one family and forced another to become something extraordinary. I wish I remembered him, but I remember you, Mom, every day, in everything I do. She knelt carefully, let baby Eleanor touch the headstone, let her small fingers trace the carved letters. This is your grandmother, Charlotte told her daughter. She built something amazing, and someday you'll help me run it, but not yet. Right now, your only job is to grow and learn and be happy. Eleanor responded by trying to eat a leaf she had found on the ground. Charlotte laughed, took the leaf away, stood up. I should go. The board meeting is in 2 hours, and someone needs a diaper change. She kissed her fingers, pressed them against the headstone. I love you, Mom. I'll see you next year. Same time, same place, with updates on everything. The walk back to the car was peaceful. Autumn sun warm on her face, her daughter warm against her chest. Life had become something Charlotte never expected. Challenging and rewarding and exhausting all at once. She was a mother, a CEO, a philanthropist, a woman still figuring out who she wanted to be. But she was figuring it out, day by day, decision by decision, becoming someone her mother would recognize, someone her daughter could look up to. The car was parked near the cemetery entrance. Charlotte strapped Eleanor into her car seat, kissed her forehead, got behind the wheel. The board meeting went well. Charlotte had learned to project confidence even when she didn't feel it. The executives respected her now, not because of her inheritance, but because of her contributions. She had earned her place, had proven she belonged. After the meeting, Theodore stopped by her office. He did that often now, not for business, but for friendship. I have news about Derek, he said. Charlotte looked up from her laptop. I told you I don't want updates. I know, but you should hear this. Theodore settled into a chair. He filed for bankruptcy last month. Lost the apartment, moving back to his father's guest house. Robert is letting him work in the mailroom. Charlotte considered this, tried to feel something. Triumph, satisfaction, pity, felt nothing but distance. Is that supposed to make me happy? I thought you should know the divorce is truly over. He's no longer contesting anything. No more legal threats, no more attempts to claim part of your inheritance. He never had a claim. No, but he finally accepted that. Charlotte turned back to her laptop. Thank you for telling me. Theodore hesitated. Are you all right? I'm fine, really. She looked up at him. Derek is irrelevant to me now, has been for months. What happens to him is his own business. I have other things to focus on. Theodore smiled. Your mother said something similar once, about a competitor who was trying to undermine Meridian. What did she say? She said, the best revenge is living well, and I intend to live very well indeed. Charlotte laughed. That sounds like her. After Theodore left, Charlotte sat alone in her office. The office that had been Eleanor's. The desk where her mother had made decisions affecting thousands of lives. It still felt strange sometimes. Sitting in this chair, making these choices, being someone so different from who she used to be. But the strangeness was fading, replaced by something that felt almost like comfort, like belonging. She was Charlotte Weston, daughter of Eleanor, mother of little Eleanor, CEO of Meridian Pharmaceuticals, and she was exactly where she was supposed to be. That evening, Charlotte hosted a dinner at the house. Her house now, filled with people who mattered. Maggie, Theodore, board members who had become friends, employees from Meridian who had known Eleanor and were now getting to know Charlotte. Baby Eleanor was passed from arms to arms, adored by everyone, the center of attention in her first birthday dress. Charlotte stood at the window, watching the party unfold, listening to laughter fill the rooms where grief had lived for so long. Her mother had wanted this for her, not just the money or the power, but this, community, connection, a life filled with people who cared about her for who she was, not what she had. The doorbell rang, more guests arriving. Charlotte moved through the party, greeting people, accepting congratulations on the company's recent successes and the baby's first birthday. Later, after most of the guests had gone, Charlotte sat on the back porch with Maggie, baby Eleanor asleep upstairs, stars emerging in the darkening sky. "1 year," Maggie said. "Can you believe it's been a whole year? It feels like forever and also like yesterday." That's how it is with big changes. They stretch time in weird ways. Charlotte sipped her wine, the first she'd had since Eleanor was born. "I was so scared last year. At the funeral, when Derek whispered those words, I thought my life was over." "I remember. But it wasn't over. It was just beginning." Charlotte looked at her friend, a different kind of beginning than I expected. Harder, but also better. "You've done incredible things this year, Charlie. Your mother would be so proud." "I hope so." Charlotte leaned back in her chair, let the night air cool her face. "I finally understand what she wanted from me. Not just success, not just money, but this. The confidence to stand on my own. The strength to build something meaningful. The wisdom to recognize what matters." "And what matters?" Charlotte thought about the question, really thought. "Eleanor, my daughter, that's the center of everything. The company matters, but it matters because of her. Because I'm building something she can inherit. Something that will give her options and opportunities and the ability to make a difference in the world." "What about Derek? Does he still matter?" Charlotte shook her head slowly. "No, I spent months hating him, months fantasizing about revenge. But that anger just took up space. Space I needed for other things." "So you forgave him?" "Not exactly. I just stopped caring. He's a footnote in my story now, a lesson I had to learn, nothing more." The night deepened, the stars brightened, two old friends sat in comfortable silence. Finally, Charlotte spoke again. "My mother once wrote that she hoped I'd find happiness. She was wrong about one thing." "What's that?" "I didn't find it. I built it, piece by piece, from the wreckage of what I thought my life should be." Maggie reached over, squeezed Charlotte's hand. "That's the only kind of happiness that lasts." Charlotte squeezed back, grateful beyond words for this friendship, for this life, for everything that had grown from the ashes of everything that had burned. The next morning, Charlotte woke early, fed Eleanor, dressed her in a ridiculous outfit covered with elephants. Then she loaded her daughter into the car and drove back to the cemetery. One more visit before the day began. She stood at her mother's grave, daughter in her arms, sun rising over the hills. "I came back because I forgot to tell you something yesterday," Charlotte said. "Something important." Baby Eleanor grabbed at Charlotte's necklace again, the ring on the chain. "I'm happy, Mom, really happy. Not every minute of every day, but overall, looking at the whole picture, I'm happy." Charlotte paused, felt the weight of the words. "I didn't think I could be. After Derek, after losing you. I thought happiness was something that had happened to me in the past and would never happen again." Eleanor cooed, reached toward the flowers on the grave. "But I was wrong. Happiness isn't something you find. It's something you make, from whatever materials you have, from the people who love you, from the work that matters, from the small moments that add up to a life." Charlotte smiled, looked down at her daughter. "And my life is good, Mom. Better than I ever imagined, because of what you gave me. Not the money, not the company, but the foundation, the values, the belief that I could be more than what Derek made me feel I was." She kissed Eleanor's head, smelled the baby shampoo and innocence. "So thank you for everything." for seeing who I could become before I could see it, for preparing me without my knowing, for loving me enough to let me make my own mistakes. The sun broke over the trees, golden light flooding the cemetery. I'll make you proud, Mom, every day, for the rest of my life. Charlotte turned away from the grave, walked back to her car, strapped her daughter into the car seat. The day was waiting. Board meetings and budget reviews and the thousand small decisions that made up running an empire. But for this moment, just this moment, everything was perfect. Charlotte looked at her daughter, at the stubborn chin, at the curious eyes, at the new life that was just beginning. "Ready to go?" she asked. Eleanor babbled something that sounded almost like yes. Charlotte laughed, started the car, drove into the morning. The future was waiting, full of challenges she couldn't predict, full of opportunities she couldn't yet imagine. But she would face it all, with her daughter by her side, with her mother's memory in her heart, strong, capable, ready for whatever came next. The final chapter of Charlotte's transformation came 2 years after her mother's burial. She stood in the ballroom of the Grand Plaza Hotel. 500 people gathered for the annual Meridian Pharmaceuticals Charity Gala, a billion-dollar company celebrating another year of saving lives. Charlotte wore an emerald green gown that Eleanor had bought years ago and never worn. For a special occasion, she had written in her journal, "Someday there will be a special occasion worth wearing it for." Tonight was that occasion. Little Eleanor, now 2 years old, was at home with a trusted nanny. Charlotte had kissed her daughter goodnight before leaving, had promised to be home before morning. "Make good choices, baby girl," she had whispered. The same thing Eleanor used to say to her. Now she circulated through the crowd, shaking hands, accepting compliments, playing the role of CEO with an ease that would have seemed impossible 3 years ago. The board members were there, the investors, the researchers who had developed drugs that saved millions of lives, the employees who made Meridian run. And in the corner, watching her was something that might have been pride. Theodore stood with a glass of champagne. Charlotte made her way to him. "You're doing great," he said. Eleanor would be thrilled. "I keep expecting to wake up, to realize this is all a dream." "It's not a dream. It's the life you built." Charlotte accepted a glass of champagne from a passing waiter, clinked it against Theodore's. "To Eleanor, Bam," she said. "Both of them." "To Eleanor." The band started playing. Couples moved toward the dance floor. The evening was officially underway. Charlotte gave her speech at 9 o'clock. Standing at a podium facing 500 people who expected her to be brilliant, she had written and rewritten the words, had practiced until they felt natural. "3 years ago, I stood at my mother's grave, holding divorce papers, believing my life was over. Silence in the ballroom, every eye on her. I was wrong. That day wasn't an ending. It was a beginning. The beginning of becoming someone my mother always believed I could be." She spoke for 15 minutes about Eleanor, about Meridian, about the responsibility that came with wealth and power. "My mother built this company to help people, not just through medicines, but through the miles she created, the communities she supported, the research she funded. Every decision she made, she asked herself, will this help or harm? Will this build up or tear down?" Charlotte paused, looked out at the crowd. "I ask myself the same questions now, every day, every decision, because that's what leadership means, not having all the answers, but asking the right questions, and caring enough about the answers to change course when necessary." She finished with her mother's words, the ones from the letter found in the jewelry box. "My mother once told me that I was worthy, worthy of love, worthy of respect, worthy of everything good this world has to offer. I didn't believe her then. I believe her now." Charlotte raised her glass. "To being worthy, all of us, each and every one." 500 glasses rose in response. The applause was thunderous. After the speech, after the handshakes and congratulations, Charlotte found a quiet corner. Needed a moment to breathe. Maggie found her there. "You were amazing." "I was terrified." Same thing sometimes. They stood in comfortable silence, watching the party continue without them. "I got a call today," Maggie said, "from Derek." Charlotte's eyebrows rose. "You're kidding." "Nope, he wanted me to pass along a message. Said you've blocked every number he's tried." I have. What did he want? Maggie hesitated. He wanted to say he's sorry, really sorry, not just for how things ended, but for all of it. The lease, the cheating, the way he treated you. Charlotte considered this, waited for some emotional response. Anger, satisfaction, something, felt nothing but mild curiosity. Did he say why now? After 2 years. He's in a 12-step program, making amends, step 9 or something. Charlotte laughed softly. Good for him. You don't want to respond. No, what would I say? I've moved on. I hope he has too, but his apology doesn't change anything for me. Charlotte looked at her friend. I stopped needing his apology a long time ago. The closure came from inside, not from anything he could give me. Maggie nodded slowly. You really have changed. I've remembered. That's different. My mother always said I was strong. I just forgot for a while. Derek helped me forget, but he couldn't keep me forgetting forever. The party wound down around midnight. Charlotte said her goodbyes, made her way to the parking garage. The drive home was quiet, city lights passing in a blur, late-night radio playing soft jazz. She thought about the evening, the speech, the 500 people who now looked to her for leadership, the responsibility that would have crushed her 3 years ago. It didn't crush her now. It lifted her. The house was dark except for the porch light. Charlotte let herself in quietly, found the nanny asleep on the couch, sent her home with extra pay. Then she climbed the stairs to Eleanor's room. Her daughter slept peacefully, arms flung wide, face relaxed. No idea of the fortune she would inherit, the power she would someday wield. Charlotte stood in the doorway, watching, and remembering her mother doing the same thing, standing in doorways, watching Charlotte sleep, believing in a future she couldn't yet see. I'm going to tell you everything, Charlotte whispered, about the company, about your grandmother, about how I became who I am now. I'm not going to hide anything from you. I'm not going to let you be surprised by the weight of what you'll carry. Eleanor stirred, rolled over, kept sleeping. But I'm also going to let you be a kid for as long as possible. Because your grandmother was right about one thing. The best gift a parent can give is time. Time to grow, time to learn, time to become whoever you're meant to be. Charlotte crossed to the crib, adjusted the blanket, kissed her daughter's forehead. I love you, Eleanor Margaret Weston, named for 2 incredible women, destined to become a third. She left the room, walked down the hall to her own bedroom, the bedroom that had been Eleanor's before it was hers. The photograph on the nightstand showed 3 generations. Eleanor as a young mother holding baby Charlotte holding baby Eleanor. Continuity, legacy, the thread that connected past to future. Charlotte changed out of the emerald gown, hung it carefully in the closet for another special occasion. There would be more. She climbed into bed, pulled the covers up, looked one more time at the photograph. Good night, Mom, she whispered. Thank you for everything. The room was quiet, dark, peaceful. Charlotte closed her eyes. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new decisions, new opportunities to build the life she was creating. But tonight she rested, secure in the knowledge that she had become everything her mother believed she could be. Strong, capable, worthy, not because of the money or the company or the power, because of who she was. Charlotte Weston, daughter, mother, leader. A woman who had walked through fire and emerged transformed. A woman who had built happiness from the wreckage of everything she lost. A woman who would never, ever settle for less than she deserved again. And that's where Charlotte's story ends. But yours doesn't have to. If this story touched your heart, if you felt her pain and celebrated her victory, I'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment telling me your favorite moment. Was it when Derek's face went white? When Charlotte held her daughter for the first time? When she finally found her voice? Hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. And subscribe so you never miss another story. Until next time, remember, you are worthy, you are enough, and your story isn't over yet.